that's a big part of healing yourself, healing your relationships with your body, is changing the way we speak to our body.
Welcome to the Reluctant Priestess podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Goldberg, and this is your space to explore the weird, woo-woo, and sublime world of spirit in a grounded and playful way. Each week we'll learn how to navigate both the beauty and the bullshit of the spiritual world to see how and if all the fabulous topics in the name of wellness that you've been curious to know more about can actually help you uncover what it means to live a more deeply connected, inspiring, and fulfilling life. If navigating the world of the unseen has felt overwhelming, fake, or too out there for you to explore on your own before, you're exactly where you need to be. The cosmic abyss awaits, my love. Let's see what magic lies in store for us today. Hello, my loves. My goodness, I just feel like time is flying. Wow. This always happens to me in spring and in fall, kind of those transitional seasons, I suppose, before we get into kind of the hunkering down of summer and winter, which feel a lot more, I don't want to say stable, but just immobile. Spring, there's this feeling of rushing forwards, and in fall, there is like another emphasis on the idea of the harvest and moving forward and preparing. Right? You have to do everything before we get to winter. But I'm feeling it, just time speeding along, like, whoa. And then it just hit me that I'm leaving Bali at the end of June. So yeah, I really only have about a month before I go, and all of a sudden it hit me about all the things I have to do. And I've been in Bali for a year, and so I've acquired some things. I do have some pack rat tendencies, although I've been better about that since I've gotten older. But I have things. I like my things. So I had to figure that out, you know? And I had never intended to stay in Bali this long. My plan had been to come for 3 months. And then I was like, okay, well, after 3 months, I was like, maybe I'll stay for 6. And then I was like, all right, maybe I'll stay for another few months. And then here we are. And it definitely feels like it's time to go now. I get that. I can feel that. I had a friend ask me, she's like, well, why are you leaving if it feels like it's bittersweet? Because I'm leaving for the south of France for a month. And she's like, why are you leaving if it feels like home here? And in so many ways, Bali does feel like home. I have community. I have friends. I have so many beautiful souls who I've connected with, and it really does feel like home in a lot of ways. And it also doesn't. I knew when I landed here a year ago on May 13th that I knew I needed to be here. I knew something special was happening when I arrived, but I also knew that this wasn't my home. And that was all part of the impetus in leaving Washington, D.C. I had moved to Washington, D.C. with my family when I was 10, and the idea was that we were going to be there for a year, and then maybe we would decide to go back to California. And after a year, we stayed, and we just kept staying and staying and staying, and I kept wanting to leave. I thought I was going to go to school out in California at one point, and then I got to California. I was like, I don't want to go there, and I stayed on the East Coast. And then I thought at one point I would move to Europe, and then I stayed. And then I met my ex-husband, and we stayed. And I just kept staying, but I always knew that there was this drive to leave. Like, I had to get the fuck out. It was not for me. And there's nothing wrong with DC, although there are a lot of things wrong with DC at the same time. Over the years, I really came to love it. There's so much beauty in Washington, D.C. in so many ways. Good people, good food. There's a lot of beauty there that I came to appreciate over time, and it also just energetically is not aligned to me. And now that I've traveled more and gone to different places and met different people, I can feel that, like, really, truly in my bones. Washington, D.C. will probably never be my home again. And for those of my friends from Washington, D.C. hearing that, listening, some of them might be surprised by that and saddened to hear that, and some of them might not be surprised at all, because this is what I've been talking about for so long. And so part of the reason me leaving was like, I had to leave. I wanted to find where I belonged. And of course, whenever we're in search of home, and that's like the hero's journey in literature, and I studied literature in school, so I'm a big nerd about that. But when we are on the hero's or heroine's journey, we are seeking something that we can't quite put our finger on. And by the way, all of us are on the hero's journey, every single one of us. We just are doing it in different ways. But I wanted to find home. And what I came to find was home was in myself. That's how it always is. I'm reminded of my favorite movie growing up, The Wizard of Oz. For those of you who haven't seen it, which is shocking, the shocking amount of people out there who have not seen this classic film blows my mind. And it's also fine. Go watch it. But basically, she's like, you never need to leave your own backyard. She realizes when she goes on this whole journey, Dorothy, that like, she's always been home. And the way I interpret that is that our body is home. This is why embodiment in the body, it's so crucial to me these days, because I'm just coming into even more keen, discerning awareness of how home is literally, it's where our body is. It's not under whatever roof it is. It's like, this is our home. My body is my home. So I'm always home. I'm always at home wherever I am. And there is also truth that different places hold different vibrational energies. So I knew that Bali wasn't my home when I arrived here a year ago, but I knew I needed to be here. And so I've accumulated these things, and I know I feel the call to go to the south of France. And I was raised a baby Francophile, so I have always been obsessed with France. Fun fact, and also hilarious, growing up, I only ever thought that you could study abroad in France. My mom studied abroad in France. She lived in Aix-en-Provence for a year, and I would hear her talk about it, and she was the only one I ever knew who really studied abroad when I was growing up. So I was like, yeah, of course, I'll study abroad in France. Like, that's the only place to study abroad. So I was such a Francophile. And when I finally found out that I could study abroad other places, I was like, oh, I want to go to these places. I ended up studying in France. But, you know, there's a piece of it that it makes so much sense that I would leave and go to this place that I've always, always loved. And at the same time, I've been before, right? Other adventures call back, in other lands call back and desire me to go there. And I rationally can't explain why, but I know that I need to go. It's coming through so strongly. The closer I get to it, the more anxious I'm feeling that I have to be drawn towards it. And that's really important to listen to when we have moments like that. When we have this really strong intuitive impulse to do something, it can sometimes feel like, oh, I got to get there now. I got to do this now. And time starts to feel like it speeds up even more. And I'm reminded that actually this is the time. And I've talked about this before. This is not new. But I'm just speaking to what is coming up for me these days. Like taking a step back during these intense, sped up moments, these swirlwinds, as one of my friends and sisters called it. Taking time during these swirlwinds to pause, to breathe, to engage in nature, to root my bare feet on the earth, to connect with the elements in different ways. I never was really big into smoking, and these days I actually do. I smoke tobacco, but I connect, I pray to the tobacco. When I'm done, I plant it back in the earth. I give thanks. And I don't do it all the time, but it's a way for me to reconnect to the elements, to the grandfather medicine of tobacco, to connect to the mother medicine of earth and recalibrate. And so what are those practices that you have? These are just some of mine, at least for now. They continue to evolve as we evolve. But a lot of forward moving energy. Wow, 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 wow. Especially when we feel the call to be in movement and to travel. Like there's all of that movement, unknown energy. So, oof. I don't know if you're feeling it where you are, but I have been. And we're coming out of a really intense astrological portal right now. It was just the eclipse season for the past few weeks. And we just came out of a full moon lunar eclipse in Scorpio this past weekend. Scorpio is all about death, resurrection, the underbelly, the shadow. And so there was a lot coming up for many people, including myself, around loss, around what's working, around what's not working, letting things go, celebrating, creating space for newness when that death occurs. And the full moon always brings out a lot of emotions, and Scorpio is also a water sign, so it's already emotional as it is. So there was a lot of really intense energies, a lot of fiery energies, a lot of watery energies. So if you're feeling like there was just a lot going on for you over the past couple weeks, probably was, honor that. Find ways of reconnecting to your body, finding ways to feel safe in your body, grounding to the earth. When we walk barefoot on the earth or sit on the earth without anything in between, walk on the earth, any of it, we recalibrate to the frequency of the earth. And we are of the earth, so there's an opportunity to find centering and resonance in that space. We remember that the earth is medicine and that our body is medicine and that we have all the medicine within already. And that leads me to our next guest today, who is the cosmic goddess, Lin Lee, my sister who I met in Costa Rica. And she's amazing, like truly, truly, truly amazing. She does so many things, and I'm always just inspired and in awe, like hearing all the things that she's up to, because she's a manifesting generator. She speaks to that a little bit for those of you aware of human design. I'll put the link in the resources for today's episode. But basically, it just means she has her hands in a lot of different pots, and she has a lot of energy to make things happen. Which I feel jealous about, because for as much energy as I have, sometimes I do not have the amount of energy that a manifesting generator has. I'm only a manifester. More on human design at another point, though. I digress. But yeah, Lin Lee, she's a multi-dimensional creatrix who's here to guide those on their healing journey and awaken the divine creative powers within. She's an intuitive and an elemental astrologer, a cosmic artist, a Chinese medicine ceremonialist, and a future doctor of acupuncture and Chinese medicine. She's the host of Soulthentic podcast, a platform to highlight the transformative stories of visionaries, thought leaders, healers, and artists that led them to embody their authentic power. Oof. Well, that is my sister Lin. I want us to just dive right into the episode. So thank you for being here. I hope you are able to receive her medicine, her magic, and integrate it into your own embodied experience. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of the Reluctant Priestess podcast. I'm your host, Hannah Goldberg, and I'm so excited to introduce my next guest to you today. This is a brilliant, brilliant woman who the fates aligned, and we met a little over a year ago, like in the back corner of a restaurant in Costa Rica. It was very random, but also not, because that's just how the universe works.
Yeah.
And she's just so amazing. I'm so, so, so excited to introduce to you Lin Lee. Hi, Lin. Welcome.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for having me, Hannah.
Yeah, so Lin, I know you are this multidimensional creatrix, in medicine and art, and you're an elemental astrologer, an intuitive, and a Chinese medicine ceremonialist. And because you're so badass, you're also going to be a doctor of acupuncture shortly. So, like, and you have your own podcast. Like, girl, you're just slaying. Woman. I'm trying to shift that language and not say girl anymore. It is important, but it's like fun, you know what I mean? But woman, you are slaying. Oh my gosh, I'm so happy that you're here. Thank you, sister.
Thank you for having me. It's such a pleasure to just come on and be able to talk with you in the digital realms.
Yeah, thank goodness for technology in some respects, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Cool.
Yes.
So I know you've been in, well, we met in Costa Rica, but, and you spent like the past year there, and now you're in
hmm
California. So tell us about your journey with that a little bit, and then we'll dive on into some of the more juicy stuff. But like, where are you? What's going on in your world today?
Amazing. I love this question. Just tapping into what's present, right? So, I just spent a year living in Costa Rica, and part of that was to travel around and essentially find myself or find what, was going to spark me. And initially what led me there was an initiation, was a deeper calling within my soul, within my spirit, telling me that there was more to life than what was around me. And I had recently just gotten through a breakup. I had my heart broken by someone I just loved so much. And I honor that path. I honor that person in this story because it led me to paradise, which is Costa Rica. And of course, the universe brings you on these magical paths. And I had no idea what to expect. This was like in the middle of COVID pandemic. And I just said, hey, the opportunity is right. I don't have any connections, any attachments to this place that I'm living. And I can go do this. And in fact, it was more of my soul being excited for the unknown rather being more scared of the unknown. And whenever I make these really big decisions in my life, I always come back to that. Do I feel more expanded by this decision or do I feel more contracted by this decision? To me, being a manifesting generator, being a sacral being, someone that is lit up and just needs to live by my pleasure, my desire, I immediately was like, I have to go. And I actually had this one moment where I was lying in bed, crying my eyes out, just like trying to figure out what was happening and why my relationship just ended. And I looked up on my wall and I have this beautiful mural on my wall of the different postcards that I've I've collected from different countries. And I looked at it and I thought, that's what I'm meant to do. My soul, my soul deeply craves freedom. Freedom from structures and from relations and from just the daily conditioning that we are so accustomed to that we get so comfortable with, right? We get so comfortable in our nooks and our spaces and what is just cozy. And during that transition, it was just asking for me to take the courage to move beyond what I knew. So I ended up in Costa Rica. And what was so beautiful about that was I met amazingly magnificent beings like you, just people on the path, people who are priestesses, goddesses, gods, people who are monks, like we have a mutual friend who just is known as like the nomad hippie, and we met so many people on this divine path. And of course, that journey was not all rainbows and paradise and like jumping naked in the ocean. It was it was a lot of me feeling really sad and depressed and in funks and angry at some certain situations that I found myself in Costa Rica, because not only is Costa Rica just a beautiful place to go on vacation, but the country itself, and this is a beautiful thing about living in a country for this long, you get to learn about the energetics of the country. You get to learn about what the country is actually offering to you, what the spirit behind the country is trying to communicate with you. And what I learned was that Costa Rica itself is a very healing place. It's what someone described to me as an a cyclotron. And
Oh,
I
I
think the
haven't heard this word.
cyclotron
What is this? This is
well,
curious.
how I'm envisioning it is it's that machine that you take your test tubes from science class and you put it into the machine and it swirls it really, really fast so it separates the molecules.
Mm.
That's essentially what's happening. You're experiencing this major polarity of time and space, what you knew as your reality and what another reality is. And you're just like being thrown into that situation. And it's challenging, it's triggering, it's bringing up deep, deep shadow work. It is an initiatory process over and over again. And at the same time, you're experiencing paradise. Like you're just like on a beach and it's beautiful and you just drank like 3 coconuts and you're like, "What am I doing here? And why is this happening?"
Yeah.
And that's the question that I just kept asking myself the entire journey was like, "Why am I here? Who am I here for? What am I meant to do? How am I meant to serve?" And that was the opportunity that gave me the space to do that. And sometimes when we have these deep cracks, right? These deep rips and ruptures in our life, it's meant to shine the divine light source into those areas and give us the space to come into our fullness, to come into our power, into our wholeness. And like, I think that's what I found when I was there in Costa Rica was like my fullness, my wholeness, and had just this divine feminine awakening, like deep, deep, deep within my roots, within my body. And I mean, Costa Rica and even Bali is just such a yin place, right? You walk outside and you're in water, you're in humidity.
Can you tell us a little bit more about like, what is yin and yang energy for those who might not be aware of that?
Yes, I love this question. And so when I'm talking about yin and yang, I'm speaking specifically about the energies. We live in a world that is built on universal principles. And from the Taoist traditions and even in ancient China, they were able to disseminate that energy itself is neutral. And so when I'm talking about yin and yang, I'm not associating with a specific gender or the way that our egoic mind sees things. I'm speaking in specifics of energy. And so because we have the sun and the moon, you can think of it like that. The sun is very yang, it has a very masculine like energy to it where it's outwards, it's bright, it's beaming. It kind of shows you everything. It's the holder, it's the great container. And the yin energy, which is the moon, is more of a feminine quality, more of a feminine energy in which it represents the shadow, right? The other side of the mountain in which is covered and feels cold, but also holds so much magic. And actually, everything manifests from that place. Everything has been contained in the cosmic yin, the cosmic womb. And so that's what I'm speaking into when I'm speaking into yin and yang. And so in Chinese medicine, we use that a lot to understand what energetics are going on in people's bodies, right? Is someone experiencing more of a yin excess, a yang excess? Is it more of a hot, right? A hot condition or more of a cold condition? And so that's what I'm speaking into. with the yin and yang.
Oh my gosh, I could just hear you talk for hours. I could just listen to you. You're just such a wealth of knowledge and just such a wealth of just source, like channeling through you. So I loved
Mm.
hearing everything that you shared. And I don't know if I'll be able to touch on all of it because I was just like totally enamored of you and in rapture. But like, I had my angel wings were tingling as you were saying things, like, because it's
Yes.
that's how it like so much of what you said, like the first thing that you said that really just like landed straight into my heart was you realizing that you value freedom beyond like
Yes.
almost anything else. And I had a very similar experience when I was going through a lot of shifts in my marriage and I knew that things weren't working out. And I realized that freedom, that value, movement, I call freedom movement because that means so many different things, the movement of the body, movement of my body to other
Mm.
locations, right? Like being able
Yeah.
to be free to do as I please and move about. Once I realized that, it changed everything. And that's what I heard for you too, is like that was the shift. Like you recognized that value. And I think when we start living from values rather than rules that are prescribed either from outside of ourselves or that we no longer question but just assume are the only truth, that is the only reality, if we live from our values rather than anything else, that is when lives shift. That is when magic happens. But we have to get really
Yes.
clear on what the values that we possess are. And those can shift at any time. I think, like, because we are shifting, of course. However, for me, movement is likely never going to go away. Freedom will never go away because my soul yearns for it. And I finally allowed it. And that's what I heard for you too. You allowed it. And then you went on this huge adventure in Costa Rica. And
Yes.
it's true, like different spaces hold different energies. And I didn't realize it till I think I got to Bali, but like obviously the ley lines of the world, and the ley lines being basically like the chakras and like all these like really magical energetic lines that support different energies to come through around the world, right? Like Costa
Mm.
Rica, I don't know if Costa Rica is on a ley line, but I love the way that you expressed that it was a, what was that word again? It was really really
Yeah,
technical.
and a cyclotron.
And it's
And
cyclotron.
yeah, to finish my note on that, and I think to add on to what you're saying is all of these different areas, these sacred sites, right? And I feel like a ley line doesn't go exactly through Costa Rica, but one goes through Peru.
Right,
And so they're very close.
right.
And so the thing about Costa Rica is when you go there, it just speeds up your healing, right? When you go to these sacred sites, you go to these really powerful energy centers, if you go to Sedona, if you go to Egypt, right? All of these places are really deep healings and also deep activations. So
Exactly.
many people can go here and be like, I remember my truth from
Yeah.
thousands of years ago. Yeah.
Totally. I remember when I was on the east coast of Costa Rica, I had one of the most profound healings ever. And it came through, and I knew that it was something, it was around the mother wound. And like I
Mm,
knew that I was working through a lot of family like traumas and feelings while I was in Costa Rica specifically. But that
mm,
one came up. It felt spontaneous, but I had planted the seed, and like I
mm,
was in Cahuita and I was just lying in bed in the morning, and it was just, and everything changed. And it was like that
mm,
from a lot of places in Costa Rica, Monteverde. I mean, having like, I felt like Moses. I was coming down from the mountain and I had all of these like downloads coming through. And it's different locations hold magic. And that is why people are drawn to them, just like you said. And it's true. Bali is very, very, very yin. It's very soft. It's very spiritual. It's one of the most, if not the most deeply spiritual place I have ever been yet. I have plans to travel other places, but I don't know that any will be quite at the level that Bali is, because the spiritual practices are so deeply ingrained in the daily life, daily rhythms, prayers, praying to the temples, bringing offerings every day. Like there's always ceremonies, and that shifts the energy all around us constantly.
Mm.
And when you do get a chance to live in a place that is like that, you feel what it does to your body on a cellular level. Like it
Mm.
changes our nervous system. It changes how we interact and see the world and ourselves. And it's so healing. I'm so glad that you've had that experience for yourself in Costa Rica and that you shared that, because yeah, it's great to go on vacation. Oh, and this is the other thing that you said that I loved. Oh my gosh. You were like, it wasn't all just like jumping naked into the ocean and like, sunshine and coconuts. It's like, it's fucking hard, right? It's
Yes.
healing. And I think there's a part of it that people avoid it because they're afraid it might be really painful and really hard. And that is partially true. And for you, has it ever not been worth it to take those steps to heal yourself?
That's such a good question. In the moments of us being in the shadow, in the darkness, in deep hibernation, and I have to say, I'm in one of those moments now.
Mm,
We are deeply cyclic beings. We live in these cycles, especially in those who have wombs, those who are pulled in that direction to live abided by the moon and her cycles. And so, in those deep moments, it is so hard. It's so challenging. Sometimes I just lay in bed and I'm like, when is this gonna be over?
I've never had a moment like that ever. I don't know what you're talking about.
And then you somehow, by the grace of divine spirit, pick yourself up, make yourself some tea, and just like keep going. And it's in those beautiful small moments. I think we sometimes graze over these small moments of like courage that we have,
Hmm,
but it's in those small moments that keep you going. And that's the strength of the human spirit, to
right.
keep going. And yes, there are times where it's fucking challenging. And I mean that with a capital F.
Capital
Like,
all the letters, babe. I
yeah,
get
it's
it.
hard. It's really hard. And so I deeply have worked and found the tools that really support me in grounding and stabilizing myself.
Hmm,
And also being in sisterhood, being community. And also, I'm not talking about just like physical community. I'm talking about like your spiritual support team. That's what I call them. Like the gods, the goddesses, the planets, like whatever you tap into that is your medicine,
yeah.
use that and also honor the lineages that it comes from, right? Don't use them just out of just because you saw it on Instagram or something, but you really dive into them, right? Dive into what the goddesses are talking about and what their lives were like and what they did and what their stories were, because many of these enlightened beings that we hear about, they actually went through so many trials and tribulations before they became enlightened. I'm telling you, like Buddha had his story. Kuan Yin, which is another goddess that I deeply deeply work with, and I feel her, like she's always with us and she's always with all sentient beings, like holding us in wisdom and compassion always. And so it's practices like these, it's the support system like these that help us. And also those small acts of courage to be like, I'm just gonna go jump in the beach naked, even though I don't feel like it right now. It's like sometimes you just need that. And I also want to bring in another element that you just talked about in ceremony and offerings, because this is something that's deeply coming into my life and mixing with all these other modalities that I'm so sparked by. And so I've been bringing ritual and ceremony into my life every day. And in fact, making mundane things into rituals, making the kind of mundane things that we don't like to do, like cooking or cleaning, as a ceremony, as a ritual. It can be that sacred if you want it to be. It's your practice, it's your free will.
What does it look like when you are doing a cooking ceremony or ritual? What does it look like when you allow that?
Mm.
And it will be different for everyone. But for those who have never had experience with ceremony or ritual outside of perhaps religion or maybe never had access to it, I think that would be super helpful to hear.
When we're talking about bringing in ritual or bringing in sacred space, let's just bring it in and say sacred space because it just makes it non attached to anything. Like making a little space sacred. What does that mean? Or making an action sacred? It could be as simple as having a prayer and saying, I bless this food. I bless the hands that made this food. I bless the land that made this food. I bless my body for bringing in the nutrients. It can be as simple as that, or it can be as wonderful and luscious as like bringing in flowers and bringing in like water and like the different elements from nature and like a rock or a stick or anything and bringing it into your fields and making it fun and playful and just magical. And so if I was cooking and doing a ceremony, I would really talk to my food. There's a reason why cacao ceremonies are done, and there's a reason why you speak to your cacao, right? Because all things have spirit. There's all living chi or energy in all living things and all beings. And so when you're talking to your food, you're recognizing that there is life in that food and you're seeing the sacredness in it by acknowledging it, by having a relation with it. And this really taps into also infusing a healing energy into our food. So not only is it giving you energy, but it's bringing you to another vibration, right? Because you're just infusing all of these like love frequencies and this gratefulness and this just juiciness into your food itself. And so it just kind of up levels the experience and brings the experience to something that's fun and playful and sacred and magical. And it can be done in any time, in any way.
Oh, thank you for taking the time. I know I kind of interrupted you there. You were on a roll, but this was like really important, I think, to hear because
Yeah.
I know I had no idea when I was first starting. I thought it would be crazy to talk to my food. And even though I had a little bit of religious background and understood prayer, like not until I started sitting in plant medicine ceremonies, to be completely honest, did I really
Mm,
understand what it meant to connect and pray from here rather than from here. And I'm pointing to my heart. Like I learned how to pray from
mhm.
my heart and not to my head. And there's so many ways to do it. And it's okay to talk to your food. And actually, have you read the book Hidden Messages in the Water?
Yes, I have. I'm a big fan.
Of course you have.
Yes.
And
Yes.
I forget the brilliant scientist who wrote it. Like he's the sweet. I remember his picture though at the back cover of the book, and he's the sweetest Japanese man. He just looks like he would be the cuddliest grandpa ever, and which I love even more. But the whole premise for the book is that there were scientific experiments for understanding that water, when we speak to water and we say kind things and loving things, that it actually shifts how the molecules in the water form to form beautiful snowflakes rather than when they're
Mm,
spoken to harshly or with hate. And then it's like they can't form snow, like beautiful crystalline
yes.
structures at all. And our bodies being at least 70% water, right, and everything around us having elements of water at varying degrees, that's all
Mhm,
part of that. It's like we speak to it because there is spirit. We speak to it because it is a part of us. Whether we
mhm,
understand it or not, like it doesn't really matter. Like the science does prove that we are all connected, even
mhm.
though we're taking different shapes of
Yeah.
source. We're all different expressions of source. And whether we're a blade of grass or, a coconut or a human being or a bird, it doesn't matter. We
Mhm,
all have this in us. So speaking from love and gratitude can
mm.
shift and make anything sacred and blessed. And
Yes.
so thank
Yes.
you for expressing that because that is what it is about, truly.
Yeah, I want to add on to that that they've actually done experiments with different plants. They've taken two plants and they did the same thing where they didn't say anything to one plant and they said, I love you, I'm grateful for you, you're such a beautiful plant every single day. And what they saw in that, there's multiple experiments like this. But what they saw and what they found was that the plant that was given the positive affirmations grew faster, brighter, and it just thrived,
Mm.
right? And so we have this very deep connection. The power of our words and the frequency that comes out sometimes are like, it's our magic. And we have to recognize that.
Witchcraft.
It is. And we have that innate creative power, but we just forgot.
Taking a moment to interrupt this playful, spiritually enlightening episode to let you know that if what you're hearing is igniting and inspiring you to take action and to step more deeply into your own empowered, transformational journey, go to the link in the show notes below and set up a free 30-minute mentorship call with me so we can chat about how to support you with aligning to the path that feels most resonant to your soul. And if you're enjoying this episode so far, don't forget to subscribe and rate the podcast at the end to ensure that more beautiful conversations with badass beings around the world continue to transpire. Thank you so much again for listening. Let's dive back into the magic. Exactly. Okay, so this is good because I feel like it's getting us into the embodiment piece, because we can speak something into existence, and that's what affirmations are. But like, I believe that I am whole and worthy of, receiving love. But if you don't
Mm.
really feel it, does that shift it? Does that make a difference? Like, how do we better embody the things that we desire so that it feels real? Because I personally have
Mm.
found that I can speak affirmations into existence, but not until I really feel it land in my body do I feel the slingshot like effects of the positive growth or just the
Mm.
magic. So what is that like for you? What do you feel with that?
Yeah, that's such a beautiful question. And I have a very personal story that I'll share on this
Thank you.
because this in itself was an initiation, right?
Mm.
Any health issue that you have is an initiation. I'm just telling you that now. And remember that you are supported, you're guided, you are loved through that every step of the way, even if that doesn't feel like that. What happened to me was, or what happened for me, I would say, is I used to struggle with my skin like for many, many, many years. I used to have acne. I used to like do all the things and just be on birth control and take all of the supplements and see all of the different specialists and things like that. And I struggled with that deeply. I struggled with it. And for anyone that has experienced like hormonal acne and have had troubles with their menstrual cycle and things like that, and just know that you're not alone. There's so many people that experience that as well. And so from my mind, I was doing all of the right things. I was checking off all of the list to make sure that I was doing the right thing. Right. And I did that for years. I did that until I was, yeah, mid 20s. And when I saw the shift was when at one moment something happened where I realized that all of the love that I'm channeling into doing the action actually needed to go into my heart space and just emanate from within. And instead of looking for validation outside of me, looking for a medicine outside of me, I had the medicine all along. I needed to accept myself and love myself before my skin was healed. Like truly that's what my experience was. I'm to testify to that. And when I finally brought this affirmation of this idea, this image into my body of what would it be like to just love myself and just like to feel my body and to accept how it's showing up right now with no judgments, of just pure holding space for it, just seeing it for what it is, my skin healed.
Hmm.
Like
Wow.
within a couple of months of me doing that.
Oh, wow.
And I'm
So
not
fast.
saying that that's the only way of healing your skin or healing your health issues, but that's a big part of healing yourself, healing your relationships with your body, is changing the way we speak to our body. Is changing the way we judge experiences, and maybe just like being the observer and saying, okay, I see this. This is for a greater purpose. I'm meant to learn from this lesson. And just in that, I realized that all of this mental thoughts and energy and affirmations really had to be embodied. And this is bringing me actually towards a beautiful project that I'm now working on, which is called Goddess Code Astrology.
Oh my gosh, I'm my whole body just activated as you said that. You must say more.
Yes.
Yes.
And so I've been an astrologer, or just diving into astrology, a student of astrology for just, I don't even know how long.
That's how I met you. You were reading a huge astrology book at the back of Love Burger.
Right. I had like it was like one of those
Huge.
medical textbooks of astrology. Just like, no big deal. This is my Friday night. Just kind of like chill back here and, like hang out by myself with this astrology book. That's seriously like my like definition of a good night to me, because I can
Yes.
bury myself into books and into spiritual knowledge. And so I started realizing, and this is something that's been coming deep from my soul, right? So, again, tapping into this inner deep listening of change that needs to happen. And so, what I've been hearing is astrology needs to be embodied. All of this, like, cosmic divine knowledge needs to be brought down into earth and to be moved through the body and to be felt and to be experienced. And that's something that I'm very passionate about right now, is connecting astrology and this wisdom that's been used for thousands of years, and connecting it to earth knowledge, connecting it to the goddess, to the divine feminine, to what we are. And another big piece of this is working with deities, working with goddesses and gods. This has been a really powerful practice for me. And so I've been combining both, because goddesses, they knew that the way of enlightenment is actually through the embodiment. It's by embodying the inner peace that you want. It's by embodying the beauty that you want, right? The kind of abundance that you want already within yourself. So that way, that's already multiplying within you and just gets reflected back into the universe. So I've been combining these two passions of mine and bringing out Goddess Code Astrology as a modality that helps to highlight and awaken people's superpowers, because I truly believe that every single person was born on this planet with a superpower, and sometimes it's harder for others to remember that. But this is a tool for remembering the different reasons why you came to this planet through the evolutionary path of your nodes, and then remembering the superpowers of your personality, of just how you love, how you express, how you are meant to just be in this world through your inner planets. And I'm also pairing that with a lot of shamanic journeying as well. So, journeying to the goddess, journeying to the planets as a practice to bring you to the spirit for the direct wisdom, right? So this isn't about being in the mind anymore. This isn't about like trying to calculate your transits and your aspects and all of the things. It's more about coming back into your intuitive knowing that I received this message, or I know that this thing is gonna happen, or I heard having this the clear audience, right? Hearing that message, or just inherently knowing that something's going to happen. Honing in those skills of your intuition is extremely important now and forever, but especially in this like goddess code astrology and the embodiment journey that I'm bringing people on.
Oh my gosh, Lynn, I am. I don't know how long this is going to go on for because literally you and I could talk about this forever. I love that
Yeah.
you are doing this work because that is, and I've had so many conversations with multiple other beings who happen to be female, but like who are in the same mindset that basically the next octave, the next iteration of spirituality, and we don't even need to call it spirituality anymore. It's just freaking living. The next
Mm,
octave of living in fullness and in joy is to be embodied. We've been so
yes.
living in the patriarchal, like post enlightenment phase of living in the mind. I think, therefore, I am. And it's like, no, you
Mm,
just are. It's just I am, regardless of what you are thinking or not. Like you exist in the body and being really cognizant and tapping into the intuition and the claircognizance and the awareness of what's happening, because what is happening inside the body is a reflection of what is happening outside around you, right? And how you are
yes.
interacting with that. And so I'm so obsessed. I'm also obsessed with how you are beautifully, it sounds like, weaving multiple modalities together: astrology,
Mm,
goddess work, embodiment, shamanism, because that makes sense to me. And actually, we haven't talked about this yet, so this is super fun right now. But like
yes.
that's also what I've been doing with some of the archetypal work that I've been getting downloads for, because it's literally seeing how they are all connected: sound, colors, chakras, all of the different systems, goddesses and planets aligning to even the archetypes that have been coming in. And it's like all of it is connected, every single
Yeah.
bit of it. And the more that we realize how all these different modalities actually synthesize, and they're saying the same thing in different languages, right? Or in different
Mm,
tools, different resources. And if we, for me, as it sounds like for you, it makes sense on how they synthesize, but that's not a
yeah.
superpower that everybody has. So I'm
Yeah.
obsessed that you're doing this because it's such important work. Thank you.
Yes. Yes. I mean, it's such a pleasure to just be this multidimensional creatrix, like putting everything into my cauldron and being like, what can I do with this? And that in itself is not easy, right? Like holding all of these different realms of knowledge and being like, how can I put this together? But that's when your creative power comes in and just creates something that's so needed for the activation and the awakening of so many people, that I know that this realm of astrology is going to be that for the people that come to me.
Oh,
So,
absolutely. Oh my gosh. And you have such a wealth of knowledge. Can you tell us, if it might feel like we're taking a step back, but everything that
yeah.
was already said needed to be said, but like tell us how you got into all this. Like, were you born this way?
Mm,
Like, what's your spiritual and cultural background and upbringing? Like, how did you get here to this point with this
mm.
much knowledge, babe?
Yeah, that's so beautiful. And thank you for asking, because that in itself is a deep and long journey. I grew up Buddhist. My mom actually, very early on, I would participate in fire ceremonies with her, honoring my ancestors, burning different like trinkets and fake money to our ancestors. And she would also cook me Chinese herbs and talk to me about what the elements were doing in my body. When I was like really young, and I used to be like, Mom, I don't care about any of those things. Like, I want to be a kid. And she would take me to the Buddhist temple, and I would just feel at home there. I would feel like this is my place, this is my sanctuary. When I see the monks, when I see people praying, when I see people humbling themselves to the divine that's within them and in the cosmos, I feel at home. And just to kind of fast forward into my journey, I forgot that. I forgot what really made me feel at home, what made me really light up. And I went on my journey, and I thought I was going to do this, and I thought I was going to do this. And I had this awakening to my power, that I'm meant to be here to awaken others, to inspire others, to empower others, and also help guide people on their healing journeys. So that's what's led me to Chinese medicine and going into my doctorates for acupuncture, which I'm so close to being finished. I'm very excited about it. And bringing that into the world, bringing back that ancient wisdom that's so coded in my own DNA and the DNA of so many people out into the modern world because it's so needed right now. People need that energetic healing, right? And the holistic aspect of healing is so important. And so all of these other modalities that I got into, like astrology and art and ceremony and shamanism, were just sparks of interest for me. Again, I'm a manifesting generator in human design. And so what that means is I am really multifaceted. Like I truly live with my hands in multiple pots. And that's my energy type. That's what really fills me up. When I'm just focusing on one thing and doing that for a long period of time, I start to feel like, okay, wait, I'm not listening to my true nature. If I'm super sparked by learning about yoni steaming, I need to honor my divine guidance and look at that because in there is a key that I need to help someone else on their path. For example, I started getting just the feeling in my body of, okay, I feel like I may need to work deeper with psychedelics. And I started just feeling into that. What does that mean? What does that look like for me? What am I comfortable with? And what is my limits? And so as a practitioner, as an alternative medicine practitioner, I started realizing, well, actually, I can help so many people on this psychedelic integration, on this huge mind medicine journey that's about to open up for society. And I started really just doing it and experimenting. I'm playing. I'm totally being in my Leoness when I learn about all of these different things.
I was about to
So,
say you're such a Leo. You're so playful. You have those playful Leo codes, which but
yes.
that's also the thing is like it's so easy in the old paradigm of spirituality to get stuck and like I love that we're having this conversation because it's so on theme with all of the conversations that I'm having right now. Be playful, be joyous, follow your joy, follow what feels right, authentically aligned for you. Tap into your ancestry, tap into what is aligned from the people who helped bear you, help make sure that you are here. When we do that, it's very meta that like I asked you about your spiritual background and upbringing, and it's like we're going back. We have to, as a society, as a world culture, go back into the ancestry. And it feels like we
Right.
have to go into a more backward space, but actually that's what's going to launch us forward into
Mhm.
better understanding it. Because when we live in our authentic truth, when we tap into the joy, when we follow our play, right? And we allow all of that to happen. That's where the magic sauce is. And that's where we can support one another and tapping into the plants, right? Tapping
Mhm.
into the psychedelics. I know there's so it's that's such a charged word. And I've had to like even reframe how I feel about that. I just call it all of it plant medicine, right? But talking to my parents who I love dearly, and they've come to a space of accepting that I have worked with psychedelic plants, but
Mhm.
using that word psychedelics, right? And like hallucinations. Oh, would you have hallucinations when this happens? It's like, I'm going to
Mm.
reframe this for you. That's an old,
Right.
outdated way of thinking. There's actually so much wisdom in the plants that feels scary for those who hold control over pharmaceuticals, hold power over human beings, who are attached to certain ways of believing. That once we realize that we tap into the knowledge that the plants allow,
Mhm.
that would shake up the system, which is not beneficial to those beings, but is
Yes.
beneficial to the healing of us as just humans living through traumatic experiences constantly. And when you were in
Mm.
Costa Rica, you were in a community that was like serving plant medicine regularly, right?
Yeah, I did. I actually volunteered some of my time to provide Chinese medicine to a community that serve plant medicine. And so I was there for 2 weeks offering my medicine to the facilitators and offering it to anyone that was open to seeing the integration, seeing the more of the mix between Chinese medicine and plant medicine and how Chinese medicine can actually support that journey. And so that was such a powerful practice and experience for me because it started making me realize that Chinese medicine can actually be brought into a ceremonial space as well. And this is another thing that I've been creating. I'm creating many things.
You are such
And
a manifesting generator, babe. Get it. I
yes.
love it.
And I totally recognize that. I honor that. And so, just in that, plant medicine is so sacred, plant medicine. And I love that you're actually speaking to changing the way we actually speak about medicine, changing the frameworks and the outdated language that is still anchored in the patriarchal paradigm. And we're changing it to something that feels more aligned to its frequency. And you're right, it is, to me, medicine. To me, a really sacred herb plant. And so with that, you bring that into ceremony and it's an extremely powerful experience. And that started making me bring Chinese medicine into ceremony and saying, I wonder what you can do with this in ceremony, or bringing in a Chinese medical herb into ceremony. And what can that do for someone on the healing journey with a really strong intention?
Mm.
So, yeah.
Beautiful. Oh my gosh, I love that. It really speaks to these different modalities and tools that we look at. It starts there, I think, when we've never
Hmm.
really been exposed to ceremony and ritual and like setting the intention and being like very clear in those moments. But
Hmm.
really it's about, if we can do it there, we can just start living our entire life as a ritual and a prayer.
Yes.
And
Mm.
that is again where we stop, we move away from saying like, I've had a spiritual awakening. Actually, babe, you just woke up. You just
Yes.
became more alive. You were always alive, you just didn't know it. Yeah, I think that that has at least been my experience in really learning to embody and own and accept my priestess archetype as like the
Mm.
main archetype that I live in and embody. That's where my medicine is right now, and that can shift, and I get that. But yeah, and to me the priestess is just the feminine word for the shaman archetype, the medicine being. And
Mhm.
I suspect you live in a very similar space. You're also just the alchemist, the magician, like fusing everything together. But like, what archetype like speaks to you and is in resonance with your soul these days, and how has that been infusing your work, like in just in
Mm.
complementing it?
I love this question so much. Yeah, what archetypes are really in my field right now? What are the archetypes that I'm embodying and really inspired by? I would also say the shamanista, right? The shaman is such a powerful archetype that's really been inspiring me because we all have shamanic roots. Many of us have very, very deep shamanic roots from many lives ago, many multiple generations ago, and we've just forgotten. So many of us can like go to these ceremonies and have this huge awakening and start to feel energies and just like feel everything so deeply, is because you are inherently tied to these shamanic qualities. And they're essentially in everybody, but just on different scales, different levels. And so really I feel like that is one of the main archetypes that are pointing out to me. And then I would also just say the goddess, right? The tantric goddess. I've been really into learning about tantric Buddhism and just the different practices within that, and how embodiment to these goddesses is just the path. It's no longer this way of releasing all releasing all your belongings, releasing all your attachments, and these kind of like archaic ways of thinking and putting yourself into a box. But it's more of, in fact, like being present completely with everything that's happening and still having this center, still having this ground within you, right? And so if anything does happen around, it doesn't throw you off your center and you can actually come back to it. And so there's that. And I also feel that another archetype that's been with me so much lately is Buddha. Like just simply Buddha and Kuan Yin and just like this, the awakened ones, the masters and these angels, these angelic beings that are really with us all the time. As long as we can just call them in and honor that they're there. That has been deeply, deeply in my field. And actually I just started reading the Sophia code, and I've read like bits and pieces of it, and now I'm really feeling like diving in and bringing the practices that are in there, like the initiations and the activations, like into a shamanic space with myself, and drumming those into my being and like speaking them out loud. That's been such a powerful practice to me. So I've been inspired by so much, right? The shaman, the shamanista, the creatrix, the divine mother, and just the inner Buddhahood that's in all of us.
Right. Oh, I love I just I love hearing you speak and talk about everything that comes through fear, because it just feels so magical, like all of it. And it's because it is magic. Like we are allowing source to move through us, right? And that's what happens when we allow ourselves to be embodied and to discern between what is ours and not ours, and being
Mm,
in service. Like that's what it means to be of service, is to be like, I am speaking, and yes, it's my voice, and it's also source, and I am
yeah.
source at the same time, right? It's all of it. It's having the humility and the grace to understand that I am like one of 7 billion humans on this planet. I am only one of truly infinite alive things on this earth, right? And like
Yeah.
that's very humbling. And at the same time, I am source made flesh, right?
Mm,
And realize that when I speak the truth of God. And like that
yes.
is when I realized. I remember it was in Bali, it was last July, and I was sitting there during a meditation, and all of a sudden I just started sobbing because I realized, I was like, oh my, I am God. And I was like, whoa, that's really trippy. And it was like terrifying and beautiful to experience that, right? Because there's that part of me that was still like, that's blasphemous. You can't be God. And I was like, who said that? Some old white dead guy? It's all fine. Everything's good, right? And the divine feminine and masculine, the of Yeshua and Magdalene these days. Like when I heard you speaking to Buddha and Kuan Yin, I know they weren't lovers in the same space as like Yeshua and Magdalene story is, but it's the same thing of the divine masculine, divine feminine coming into union, like with
Mm,
the representation of Buddha and Kuan Yin, that like I'm hearing
mm,
you speaking to. And that is it. We learn about the goddesses, we learn about what like the right hand of tantra is, to understand what it means to be truly embodied in the divinity of the grace of the divine feminine, and especially for those of us who have wombs as women. And
mm,
we learn about that, and then we learn to like bring in the masculine piece too, to the point where like it really doesn't matter if we call it masculine or feminine. Those are just words. We don't need to gender the language. And I think we
right.
continue to evolve, we'll move away from that. The language that's been coming up for me around these terms is divine feminine as artist energy, and divine masculine as curator energy, and shifting more
Mm,
into even that language, because the artist is like chaotic and has all of these visions, is deeply intuitive, and is like moving from
yeah.
place to place and creating and creating. And the curator takes all the pieces of art and finds ways of putting it in a way that rationally makes sense, so the story can be told, so
Mm,
that we can see all the beauty that has been created and still hold it and revere it. And so I've been
mm,
moving towards like that less gendered language even in my own practice, because it doesn't matter if it's feminine or masculine, that it's important and it also doesn't matter. And that's like the beauty of getting into duality and non-duality too, is like everything matters and nothing matters. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's everything you said just brought that up. So thank you for sharing
It's
what you did.
powerful.
I appreciate it. Oh my gosh.
That's powerful. And as you were speaking, I started envisioning Pisces and Virgo being these opposite signs, but you just explained it, right? Pisces being this all-encompassing womb of creation, and then the Virgo being the curator, right? Like the organizer, the manager of what's happening. And so it's really beautiful. Thank you for sharing
No, thanks.
that.
And actually, you just brought that up. It's funny that Pisces and Virgo came up because Pisces is my north node and Virgo is my south node. So,
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. I mean, you're seems like you're on the path. You're talking about it just clearly. So, yes, love it.
awesome. So, my dear, I mean, if there was one word that you could use to describe yourself, any just like your essence, I want to when I really want to help people shift out of the when people ask who you are, they say, "Oh, I am my job," or "I am this role I play." I want us to think about what is our essence, right? That's what matters most.
Mm,
So, what is your essence, babe? Who are you?
mm, beautiful. I would say Soulthentic
Yeah.
is my essence. And yeah, Soulthentic is my podcast. So
I was going to say, so tell us more about Soulthentic and where people can find you and some of the other work that you're doing. That's actually a perfect transition into all of that.
beautiful. Yes. So Soulthentic is a word that I channeled that became downloaded to me as a new way of understanding our frequency. It is authenticity times 1,000 plus like soul, higher self, all of the things, right? So when you're embodying your soul authenticity, you're living truly aligned with your soul essence. There's no separation between the being and the doing. You just are. And so that's what soul authentic to me is, right? Being soul authentic, being that unique frequency that sometimes rattles things for people, but you're going to just stand in your power. And so I created out of that word a podcast in which I have conversations like these, which I'm so excited to, have our episode go live. And I just deeply go into so many people's paths in that because I feel at this time it is the moment to tell our story. It is the moment to speak our story out and record it into the digital realms so that the people after us, the future generations, can learn from what we've gone through and to also bring our collective to a higher understanding of ourselves and the magic that we bring. So that is that podcast. I record people and have an episode every week that comes out. And if you would like to get in touch with me, if you have any questions or if you just wanted to just chat about any things that I talked about, feel free to tune into my podcast on Spotify, Apple, and you can reach out to me on Instagram at Lin Embodied. That's LINH Embodied. Yeah, I'd be happy to speak with you then.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, Lynn, you are truly such a wealth of information and just such a beautiful, embodied, powerful soul, powerful woman. And like the work you're doing is so important on all the different levels, individually and also as you synthesize it and integrate it. And I know that
Mm.
you and I are going to be continuing to create together and be in touch because something drew me to you. It was that giant astrology book, and you're just like this beautiful goddess sitting back there just reading it. And from that moment, it was sisterhood already. And I'm just so grateful that we've been able to stay in touch as we have, even if it's few and far between, it's still in connection. And that to me is what it really means to be in soul communication and soul community with people. It's like you meet kindred spirits, they come in the most magical and unexpected ways and then stay present with you for the duration of the medicine that we have to offer to one another. And so I'm so grateful for your medicine and I'm so grateful for your presence and your joyful codes. Thank you. Keep doing what you're doing, sister. I love you.
Oh, I love you so much. Thank you for having me here, and it's just such a pleasure.
Thank you, my dear. And thank you to all listening. I'll go ahead and make sure that you can connect with Lynn through the resources and the links below. So be sure to check that out and have an amazing day, my loves. Ciao.
A beautiful day. Thank you.
Thank you so much for tuning into this very reluctant priestesses podcast. Without you, I'm just talking to myself, and as much as I actually enjoy that these days, this is way more fun. If you liked this episode, please be sure to rate, subscribe, and leave a review. And take a moment to send this to someone who you think this episode might resonate with. Who knows? Maybe it's the bit of magic they didn't know they were looking for. Until next time, ciao!